Hello, it's Brandon Broadwater, and welcome to the Higher Lots corporate office. What a privilege it is to be here with you today. And I love being able to have the camera. Welcome to our boardroom. I'm glad that we can be here together. I love being able to see each other, and I love the interaction that we are able to have in a training environment where we can actually be together with this digital technology in this digital age. What an amazing time in history that we have landed, right? It is getting more and more amazing. So welcome to the Master's Call. One of our purposes today is to answer your questions. That's one of the purposes today. The other purpose is this. The reason why people come here is because they want a difference in their lives. Most people who are on this training are entrepreneurs or leaders. And if they're not an entrepreneur and a leader, then they are individuals who are unwilling to settle in the relationships they have in their lives. They want to create greatness, not only in their relationships, but as a leader, which means we do great things. We just don't go through the motions of making money. We create leaders in the process. And there's entrepreneurs that are here as well that have a dream and they want to achieve it. And some of them are achieving it and they're starting on new dreams. Either way, the people that are here are individuals, leaders, and entrepreneurs that desire greatness, that are seeking greatness. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here right now. I know I can't, like some people come here because they think I'm going to fix them. I'm not going to fix you. The greatness, here's the secret, the greatness is already inside of us. It's right in here. It's already here. And once we know that, we just got to figure out ways to access it. And that's what this is about. You know, it's interesting to me because it is not just a normal person off the streets that does what we've decided to do. When a person seeks greatness in these different areas, they're a person who's unwilling to settle for mediocrity. And that's a big deal. Unwilling to settle for mediocrity. I have respect for these individuals. I have so much respect for people who are entrepreneurs because they know part of the deal. The statistics are against them. They have to deal with uncertainty. They have to deal with things that the poor middle class mindsets don't have to deal with. Entrepreneurs have to balance different balls. They have to drive their own certainty from different sources, from external results. For example, achievement is what in business is what creates tremendous self-confidence. However, what are we going to do at the stages of our entrepreneurship? What are we going to do in the stages of our leadership if it's not quite there yet, if the results aren't there yet? Where do we draw our confidence from, right? Where does that come from? Well, there's two places where that comes from. And we cannot miss these two things because almost every individual will go back to these two things when they're stuck. And I'm telling you, money and success and all the success and money that can happen from entrepreneurship, from great leadership, won't ever give a complete, full amount of sense of accomplishment, confidence. It won't fulfill that confidence because what's going to happen at one point or another is there's going to be a new challenge, no matter how much success we've had. It's the edge. And when we have that, our past accomplishments won't be enough to push us through that edge. It's still going to require these two things. These two things. In fact, there's three. I'll tell you the third one. It's really good. Usually we save it for advanced stuff, but we'll cover it right now. We're on the Master's Call. We'll do it now. So here's one of them. If we want to be able to push through that edge, if we want to have that confidence, if we want to achieve the results, but yet the confidence is not quite where we want it to be within ourselves, where do we start? Where can we draw it from? Well, one of the things that I've learned from one of the biggest, largest motorsports dealers in the United States. I was with the CEO here this week. He's a buddy of mine. I bought an airplane with him. One of the things I learned from him is his story on how he became one of the largest, he's the third largest in the United States for motorsports. And it was interesting because his story had one of these three things. And here's one of them. He said, when I first got started, I didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't have a lot of authority. I didn't have a lot of reputation out there. But I did have this. I had enthusiasm. And you see, enthusiasm is one of those three things that we can start with right now. In fact, any smart leader, any leader that knows what they're doing, they seek out enthusiasm. And if it's not enthusiasm, if a person does not have enthusiasm, they don't get hired. They're not going to be people that will get the opportunities in business. They're not going to be, whether they're the business owner, the entrepreneur, they're not going to get an opportunity for leadership, because leadership takes enthusiasm, but it's not just blind enthusiasm alone, right? Sometimes we have enthusiasm, we got nothing else, but there needs to be more. It can't be soloed out. It can't be, there's more to it. There's three things here. The next piece with beyond enthusiasm is, and this is interesting, is faith. Because being excited, but yet not having the true faith, the faith I'm talking about is when you can actually be excited, you can have enthusiasm, and you can push through and follow through with it. And that second component is faith. And it's huge. It's huge. Of course, in the midst of this, an individual has these two things. They can push through barriers. And it's so interesting. I remember we did some research on a top CEO last week. And this CEO had one of the largest companies in the United States. And we asked him, how did he get started? And the way he got started was literally he walked in when he was young, early 20s, to another company, asked for a job. And they said, what are we going to do with you? He said, just with enthusiasm, he says, I can do this job. Just give me a chance. Just give me a chance. And they said, well, we need a warm body over at this boat show. And he went to a boat show, and he broke the boat show all-time record of selling 14 watercraft. And do you think he was hired? How does somebody do that? He told us that he did it with enthusiasm. And he did it by asking a lot of questions to the customers, figuring out what they really wanted. And enthusiasm. He learned about those watercraft, and he had enthusiasm and asked a lot of questions about the customers. Of course, do you think that there was opportunity for him after that first day on the job, right? It's interesting because in leadership and entrepreneurship, we must understand that if we want to do something, if we want to make anything profitable at one point or another, we've got to learn how to sell. And learning how to sell has to do with enthusiasm. It's number one out of the 7 keys of influence. If you remember the 7 keys of influence, number one is state, which means there's got to be some level of enthusiasm. There's got to be some excitement about what we're doing. There's got to be, and I'll share this with you, there is something we can do to step into that enthusiasm easier. And it's by doing something we love, doing something we believe in. And that makes it easy. That makes it so our work doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. It's what we would do anyways, right? So that's one thing that I've learned that's made a huge difference. So that's the second thing. First, enthusiasm. Second one is faith. And the faith helps us to drive that enthusiasm. Now remember, this is coming before achievement. So this self-confidence a lot of times comes from achievement in business, right? And you can get it from other places. This is how it usually works. And what we're talking about is before that achievement comes, before the results come, what's our go-to? What do we go to before the results are there, before we have the results we want, right? Enthusiasm, faith. And there's one more piece. The third piece is absolutely critical. And I bet if we think about our lives, and by studying the best times that we were able to push through when we didn't have results but we got them, you'll see this pattern was there. In fact, I did more research with one of the largest companies in the United States, one of the CEOs in the last week, and he ended up doing this exact same thing. He ended up doing this exact same thing. 1, enthusiasm, 2, faith, and the third one is stay in motion. It is so critical to stay in motion. When we stay in motion, we are able to make better decisions. We're not sitting back. We're pushing into life. There is some critical components and dynamics and patterns that go on around a person's life when they are in motion. Even if they're going in the wrong direction, if they have enthusiasm and faith, things work out. But if we don't have that third component of motion, then what can happen is that people get stuck. People get stuck, they get disheartened, it starts to break down their faith, and of course, enthusiasm will go next. But there's something about motion. There's something about that consistency and staying in motion that can make all the difference. And let me share with you why. Emotion is a huge driver inside of all of us. And in order to keep emotion, that thing that where a lot of this starts from, that drive, that dream, where do we want to go with all this? That part of ourselves, our heart that pushes forward in something that draws us, things that draw us forward. That emotion requires motion for it to have traction to hit the road, right? In order for that to happen, we need to have motion with these things that we feel. I see this all the time. I saw it yesterday. I was talking to the top banking executive yesterday. I was with him in his office, and they wouldn't let me out the door. They asked him so many questions about leadership and how to get to the next level and how to inspire their teams. And one of the things he asked me was, what can I do to be more hungry? And we started talking about the difference between honorable and valiant, how the valiant people are the ones who go the extra mile. The honorables, it's not that they've done anything wrong. They haven't just done anything great, right? So I started talking about the fundamentals of leadership, higher laws style, the way we talk about it, principle-based, right? And it was amazing to watch his body language. You could see his heart, and he even said it. He's like, oh my gosh, I can feel it right here. Like, this conversation, Brandon, was meant to be, right? This is one of the lead guys at the bank. And he says, this conversation was meant to be. I've been thinking about this stuff. I've been thinking about it for months. And then his assistant manager says, yeah, we've been talking about this back here in the CEO office. We've been talking about this, and this is it. This is it. What you're talking about here today, Brandon, this is it. I said, great. Then we have some things we need to do. And I put before him a challenge that put him on the edge. And it was amazing how fast, woo, they went to their heads. They went to their heads. And they said, oh, whoa, I gotta think about that one. I said, why do you gotta think about it? You were just pointing out how every part of you said yes. Now why do you go to your head and wait? Why do you do that? This said yes, go. It's okay to think about it, take your time. But let's talk tomorrow. You take all the time you want to think about it, but don't forget the difference between your head and between what was down here and what you felt. My friends, I know a lot of friends. I have a lot of amazing friends that completely inspire me. Some are the largest in their industry, some are close, and all of them are driven by this. They're driven by their heart. They're driven by that emotion that we're talking about. And that is so critical for us to stay in motion, to keep that fire burning within us. The same thing's true in relationships. We can't create a great relationship and greatness in our relationships unless there's momentum and consistency where we're letting each other know that we have each other's back, right? You can't disappear for a week or two emotionally or physically without having some kind of connection. Thank goodness for technology. We can have that connection. But there's a difference when we connect with our hearts at a consistent level and we're seeking that connection, that attachment in a relationship. It's the same thing. We need to keep motion in our relationships as well. It's a lesson of it's a lesson of relationships, it's a lesson of leadership, and it's lessons of entrepreneurship. And if we don't do these three things, I'm sorry, my friends, we cannot get to where we want to go. At every single season, there is a place for motion. At every single season, there is a place for faith. And at every single season, there is a place for enthusiasm. Granted, if we don't have the results we want now, we can't ride on our results. That feels good when we get those results. That sense of accomplishment and that confidence that goes with it, if we don't have that right now, then we can go back to the things that precede that and that are going to precede every great endeavor. And it's enthusiasm, it's faith, and it's staying in motion. My friends, what an amazing lesson. So, with that said, my challenge for you is to set out in motion that which lies before you. And set big goals, because small goals have not the power to stir man's heart. They have not the power. That's pretty good. We should write that down somewhere. We need to remember this, though. We need to stir our own hearts. Much less if we want to have any leadership in this world, we got to stir the hearts of others around us. But it's got to be something of substance. It's got to be something that has substance to it. And that means it can't be small. Greatness requires that we do great things. So think about what you want to do and apply these three principles: enthusiasm, faith, and stay in motion. Stay in motion. So with that said, have an amazing day and take care. That's the end of the call. I'm going to open it up to questions and answers, and this is my favorite part. Your questions, you're going to have a chance to ask any question you want right now. You have the opportunity to type it in the chat. I'll even unmute some of you. We'll get this computer set up so we can unmute some of you. And I mentioned at the beginning of this training, think about questions that you have. And now's going to be your opportunity to ask them. You and me, right here. If you could ask a millionaire a question, I'm going to ask you some of these questions. If you could ask a millionaire or a top entrepreneur in their industry a question, whether it's me or the other people I've been talking about, what would those questions be? What kind of questions would you ask? If you have a question about leadership, if you have a question about entrepreneurship, if you have a question about relationships, what would your question be? And especially related to greatness. How do you create greatness in those areas? That's one of the reasons we're here today, right? How do we create greatness in these areas? So I'm going to open it up. Now's your chance. All right, Oakland. I'm going to actually unmute you on this, and we'll see if we can get your live audio going. See if you can unmute it. All right, looks like Oakland, if you can't unmute, then we'll go ahead and just read your question. So Oakland has an amazing question. He says, how do you manage the streets from starting a business from negatively affecting relationships? Oh, Oakland, looks like you're live. Go ahead and speak. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, so why don't you ask your question in your own words?
All right, I was thinking about a business I'm starting right now. We're having a grand opening here this weekend, and I notice that sometimes I get pretty stressed from all the things that need to get done, and I see that it leaks into being short with the relationships that I have with family, and I was just wondering if you have any simple tricks or something to kind of keep the focus of loving them in a better way.
Absolutely. Now, who are you talking about with family?
Well, I'm in business with a couple brothers, and also my wife. When I come home at night, I feel like things need to get. I don't know, not things need to get done, but I'm in the getting things done mode, so I'm a lot quicker with responses and not taking time to, I don't know, find her heart, I guess.
Absolutely. And so the big thing is here, when you're going home, how can you transition in a way where it doesn't create shortness and it sounds disconnection? How do you get reconnected when you're so focused in achievement and then you transition home and that whole focus doesn't seem to work the same way, right?
Right.
Okay. That's a great question. Well, here's a couple keys when you're going home and being highly focused. First question is, what time are you going home on average?
Probably about 8 o'clock at night, 7:38.
Okay, and then what happens in that time period between 7:30 and 8 and then when you go to bed?
For lack of a better word, it's kind of like a debrief, like seeing how each other's doing in our day. Put little man to bed and try and get ourselves ready for bed. Maybe eat some dinner.
Perfect. And so you're finding that you're short at home because you're still thinking about the business. Is that what's going on?
Uh, a little bit. Also, like I have a job as well, so I'm trying to get enough sleep so that I'm not like dying the next day. So I have a little bit of anxiety about trying to get to bed on time and then trying to juggle quality time with it.
Absolutely. That's a great question. Well, here we go. Hope you're ready for this answer. There's a critical thing that needs to happen to transition home when we're focused as entrepreneurs and leaders. And it's huge. And if we don't do this, we're going to run into all kinds of issues, a lot of issues. And one of the issues is this. One of the solutions is this. It's called married time. And people who don't take this carved out, no distractions, married time, that means just stop everything that's going on in life. Maybe you could fold laundry together, maybe you could do dishes together. But there's no phones. There's if you have kids, teenagers, young kids, you tell your kids, married time is happening right now, and go do what you want in your room. If you want to read your books, whatever, go tuck them in, do all that, and say you stay in your room. If you come out of your room, say you just got to get extra jobs tomorrow. So I had a 12-year-old that came out of his room last night during our married time, and we lovingly told him, said, hey, bud, you came out during married time. This is when mom and dad roam the house. And he's like, oh, I got to get this, I got to get that. And I'm like, it's married time, bud. And you got to do an extra job tomorrow. You got to clean up the whole shoe area, the entrance to the house, right, from the garage. And he said, all right, no problem. I know the rules. And what it is it's something that the kids actually will respect tremendously because the parents are making a priority with their relationship. And we call it married time. And we explained it to our kids. We didn't just drop it on them. And it was also important for Leslie and I because now we had carved out time that was just for each other. And there's something about having that time that's critical. Now, you also mentioned that you were short. You had some shortness at home. Well, here's a way to take care of a transition going from home or from business and being focused as a leader, being focused as an entrepreneur. And there's something you can do that's really simple is go home and change your clothes. Go from, if you wear a button-up or a suit, change your clothes to something more comfortable. Go into the bathroom and splash your face, wash your face off. It's a state management thing. You're shifting your environment. And then what happens is it'll help you to change your attitude. It'll help to be less focused. And for goodness sakes, get the electronics out of there. You cannot have those notifications going on. You do not want that happening. It's going to buzz you. It's going to pull your mind. And then if your mind's over here, the person's going to have a hard time connecting with you because you'll be short with them. Your head's somewhere else. Your head's somewhere else. And one more thing about being short with partners is whether it's stress, whether it's being distracted, there's one other piece that could be there, and that is the lack of gratitude. Gratitude is a foundation for not only meekness and openness and soft-heartedness, which is the opposite of being short with somebody. If there's not some level of soft-heartedness in a communication approach, then things are going to go wild on us. That's when criticism is high. That's when people don't feel like you have each other's back, and that's when shortness comes. If somebody's short with you, or in a relationship, in a marriage, or in a partnership, we got to remember that if somebody is short, we could ask them, what's your soft-hearted approach, or what's the heart around what you're saying, and be totally curious, because a lot of times a criticism can be out there, but we can try again by asking, what's the soft-hearted feeling that you have about this? What's really under all of this stress that's coming out of you, right? And being kind and open to that. And vice versa. If there's shortness that comes out of us, we can say, hold on a minute. Hopefully our partner will ask us and say, hey, could you tell me what's the hard about in this? But if they don't, it's still our responsibility. If we find ourselves being short, we say, hold on, let me get to the heart of this. Here's the heart of it. I'm just feeling stressed out. I got a lot on my plate, and I feel like that we're not making each other a priority, or we're criticizing each other too much, and I want to have more gratitude towards one another. So you get to the heart of the matter is my point, and that can make all the difference. So those are a couple things to help with that shortness. And that married time, I got to emphasize it. People who do married time have the opportunity for great relationships. And I'll tell you, people who don't, they don't have great relationships. They don't. You cannot have a great relationship without the time that can create the connection. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time, but it has to be dedicated time where we set that time for that person, for that relationship, and we drop all else. And in this busy world, that can make all the difference. And it shows. We've done research with different couples. We've done research with other therapeutic therapists that do interventions in marriage couples, and they find that the successful ones are ones that do married time. They're people who take the time. And the people who don't, they can get all the training about relationships, but if they don't take time daily, it just won't work. It just won't work. So, Oakland, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, tell me what sticks out right here. What seems to speak to you about what we talked about?
Well, I feel like it's a hierarchy thing. Being within principle of making the time, when you said carve out time for marriage time, it feels like a principle of success in my mind, and some tools to use it, like something as simple as changing your clothes. I think that is a small little big thing.
Small little thing.
And also, it's a very good reminder to, when you talk about the soft-hearted feelings behind it, I feel like that's huge into being more real and getting rid of the fluff when you're connecting.
Absolutely. Remember, Oakland, that when that language and when we're missing each other in relationships, usually it's because the partner or ourselves, we're checking to see if that person has our back or not. And so if there's any stress that comes from your partner, then make sure that we remember the goal here is to be connected. And so they're checking to see if I'm here for them. And if we see things through that filter, we won't take bait, not that they're trying to trick us, but we won't be taking different conversations in a direction that has no solution. The solution here is to have that connection so we can have that love and that intimacy that's emotional and spiritual, sometimes physical, or all the time physical if we do this right, that's amazing and passionate and loving. So that's awesome. Here's one more thing, Oakland, that's made a big difference for me. A phone call or two during the day that's unrushed. It's unrushed. It's a simple phone call of calling your partner and saying, hey, how's your day going? Oh, that's great. Is there anything I can do for you? Can I pick you up anything on the way home? And just asking those things can make a huge difference. And here's the point. It's not just the phone call. It's the unrushed phone call. So when they get the sense that you're asking, so how you doing? And you're not rushing them. Well, I got to go here in 5 minutes. I got a few seconds. So how's it going? Can I do anything for you? All right, see you. Got to go. Right? It's not that feeling. And when we have that unrushed approach for a check-in call throughout the day, woo, that sends the message that I have your back. So there you go, Oakland. You had a great question. Thanks, bud. Is that last part helpful, Oakland?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, bud. All right, the next question. We have, let's see what we got. Well, we got a lot of questions. Let's see what we got here. All right. So here's a question. How do you stay in momentum when there are so many things to do and so many distractions? Can any of us relate to that? How do you stay in momentum when there are so many things to do and so many distractions? Well, I'll tell you this. Priorities. We have to carefully prioritize our time each day. Every single day, every week, all our decisions will be based upon priorities. And our success will be based upon those priorities, whether we prioritized in the way that would create results or not. And one of the things that I've learned is that I need to work smarter. As I've transitioned from an entrepreneur from a CEO position, I've had to change my whole entire mindset of going about things, such as allowing other people to do the things that I think I could do and relinquishing some of that control. It's critical to do that. Letting certain balls drop. There's a wonderful book that we're going to be studying soon in the Abundance Mastermind, which is amazing. If you're not part of that, you guys, I recommend you get on it. It's called Essentialism. And, you know, when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another. And when you say no to one thing, you're saying yes to another. And so prioritizing where we spend our time is huge. Let me tell you about a friend of mine. I'll just talk about my friend of mine that I partner with, the Airplane. So he's the third largest motorsports dealer in the United States. In 5 years, he's projected they will be competing to be #1 in the United States, the largest dealership in the United States. They're just killing it out there. And one of the things that he said as a business owner is his focus is to chase the money. Now, don't think that it's superficial or the lack of heart. It's simply how has he prioritized his time as a CEO to become one of the largest motorsports dealers in the entire United States. And the way he did it was he chased the money, which means he prioritized his time by choosing what will produce the most cash. Is it spending my time with making a sale? Is it spending my time networking with somebody who can help me to make many sales? Or is it spending my time purchasing another dealership that can now replicate what I already have, right? And so that's something to think about. It might be a different business than some of you guys are in. However, I think there's important lessons in that. How do we prioritize our time? And there's a term called closest to cash. Closest to cash. And listen, if we're going to talk about business, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, there's a way we can make decisions we will do what's closest to cash and chase the money at the same time, which means you don't make money the ultimate goal, but for goodness sakes, if we don't make our income and cash flow in our business as a priority, the business doesn't work. And so those are some things to think about. What's closest to cash that's more short term, and what can you do to chase the money? Where is the money? Where is it? And then chase that. Where is the greatest opportunity to make money and chase that? Because in a business, having money come in provides for more opportunities. And by all means, we do not have to give up on our vision, on our mission, on the purpose of the business to make a difference in people's lives, for example. One of our purposes here is to empower entrepreneurs to greatness, to create greatness in entrepreneurs, right? That's one of the things we do. To empower leaders to achieve greatness is another thing we do around here. You know, another thing we do around here is we help bring greatness to relationships, right? We help draw out greatness within ourselves. So those are some things we do. And because we make decisions in the company that are based on not only creating greatness in people's lives as the primary mission, we still need to prioritize our time to what's closest to cash and where are the greatest income producing opportunities, as far as my Airplane partner called it. He said, chase the money. But to do that in a way of prioritizing our time can be critical. And prioritizing our time with that can be huge, but we don't give up the heart of what we're doing in the process. But we need to be smart in how we prioritize things. So if we can prioritize what generates cash so we can hire new people, we can expand, and we can ultimately serve more people, that takes cash to expand. It takes cash to hire people, right? Then ultimately we're completing the mission and being profitable. And when we can do both of those things, then that's what I would call success. Having the cash without the mission being completed, that's not cool. And having the mission get completed going broke, that's not sustainable. So how do we prioritize? Those are some ways we can prioritize. Closest to cash, follow the money, and stay on mission. That was a great question. All right, with that said, we are out of time. I hope you had an amazing time with this question and answers. think about questions, plan on having more question and answer opportunities, and I'll see you guys next week. Have an amazing day and take care.